Today, 24 April, marks the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, a day established by the UN General Assembly in 2018 as a way to share the values of multilateralism and reaffirm the principles of the UN Charter. This day is also a chance for us to reflect on the relevance of multilateralism in today's world and to question where it's heading. Is the multilateralism we have today capable of addressing the enormous challenges of our time? How can it be more inclusive and responsive to a rapidly evolving and fragmented world? How can it serve the unique needs of people everywhere and be a voice for generations still to come? The UN is at the core of the multilateral system, and so these questions are essential to our daily work. And we decided to give space to youth to be a part of this year's reflections at UN Geneva. We invited graduate students from various universities to join us here at the UN Library Archives Geneva to reflect on the multilateralism we need for today and the future. Students from Sciences Po in Paris, the Graduate Institute, and the University of Geneva came, engaged, and reflected with UN officials for 1.5 days. And they also left a few questions for our Director-General here at UN Geneva to consider and reflect on as we mark this day. And before we get to those questions, we have firstly a question to you, Director-General. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let's begin just with a question to you. Why do you think it's important that we mark the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace?
Well, today in 2024, we are celebrating these days for the 5th time. But of course, the history of multilateralism, the history of multilateral system is much longer. And we are proud that we are here now in Geneva in the birthplace of modern multilateral system, which was really established with the League of Nations. And we are now in the premises, former premises of the League of Nations. Then, after the Second World War, the modern multilateral system, the United Nations, were established. And you can easily see the parallel each time when humanity is facing a crisis, when humanity goes via great unimaginable sufferings, when humanity has world military conflicts, human tragedies, humanity understands that the only alternative to this permanent crisis is diplomacy for peace, multilateral discussions, and humanity makes a next step to re-establish and reaffirm multilateral system. In 2024, we're in a similar situation. If you compare 2019, the year when this day was established, and 2024, you can see that the world has unfortunately faced many new crises. The old crisis, like the climate change, remains with us, but we now have many more military conflicts. We have many more human sufferings. We have many more human tragedies, and we all understand that the only solution is really to work together, to sit around the table and to discuss the future. And also it's very, very important to understand that, of course, modern multilateralism should be different from the multilateralism of the League of Nations time or even of 1945, because the world has changed. In 1945, we had, I think, about 51 states, member states of the United Nations. Now we have 193. And the voice of each member state should be heard. And quite often, the voices of the smallest nations are the most important. Because if you take climate crisis, who is bearing already today the costs, the consequences of the climate change? Small Pacific island states. And we have to listen to them, because for them, it's already the existential threat. But also the world is totally different because we have many more actors in the international arena. Of course, sovereign states, nations, they remain the key actors, but we have civil society, non-governmental organizations, private sector, academia, young people, and only working together we can find solutions to these challenges. That's why multilateralism today is more relevant than ever. Of course, we have to transform multilateral system to make it fit for the 21st century, but humanity doesn't have alternative to multilateralism.
Thank you, Director General. And on the occasion of this day, we wanted to give the opportunity to students who participated in our recent event to ask you questions and to reflect with you. And they worked in particular on the themes of human rights and migration, AI and digital governance, and sustainable development. And all of the questions relate to those themes. So let's begin. Our first question is from Elena Fecchio from the Graduate Institute. Elena, what would you ask the Director General?
I think that what I would ask her is the meaning that she gives to the values and goals she pursues. I think that this is of radical importance. I know that when it comes to value-based themes and value-based policies, there's always a lot of controversy. But I think that knowing that we have to achieve for a common good and being aware of the meaning that we give to that good is fundamental, because that is critical thinking. That is, okay, it's like a step into the void, basically, because we do not know what the good is in general, in universal terms. But being aware and able and willing to make that jump and risk attributing to that good a meaning and using that as a drive for our policies, I think it's the grounds for actually trying to renovate a new and, I would say, more hopeful leadership in the future.
We're aiming for prosperity for all, for development for all, for human rights for all, for peace and security for all. That's the aim of the United Nations. That's our values. We are living in the same planet. We are all neighbors, and whatever happens to one of us has consequences for another. And there is not a possibility to isolate yourself from the situation in the world. All the conflicts, sooner or later, become global conflicts. That's why we have to work in consensus, we have to work in solidarity, and we have to work in inclusivity. Inclusivity is one of the key values, like also the values of equality and values of diversity. We have to remember that we are all different, we are all diverse, but we all are equal and we share the same values.
Our next question is from Marisol Obregon Alvarez, who is from Sciences Po.
Well, we all know how the United Nations system works. By its own nature, it's bureaucratic. So my question is, how to address the most pressing and urgent challenges and finding a way around all this bureaucracy and finding effective ways to address or to stop people from suffering?
Well, my advice is to you, to young people, is to act. Because bureaucracy or administration or governmental structures, they do exist. And quite often, we all really feel frustration. Because quite often, it's not exactly bureaucracy. As I said, in order to make a multilateral decision, you have to find a common platform among 193 states. And it's not very, very easy, because each country has its own national position, and it takes time and lots of effort to see what is our common good, what is our common position. But you, young people, you can really press the governments to act sooner. Take the climate change. Without the young activists, without young boys and girls all around the world who really pushed the governments, I don't think we would have made such a progress in understanding the situation, in making decisions. That doesn't mean that we already have all the necessary decisions, but at least there is an awareness of the situation. And we all know that we, the governments, we, the United Nations, are under permanent stress from the young people all around the world who demand us to work quickly. So I think it's very important to find channels for work between civil society, organizations representing young people, and administrative, governmental, and intergovernmental structures, and really to become partners. And for us, I often say, it's very important when we feel that the young people are pressing us, we are looking for the solutions.
Thank you, Director General. Our third question is from Francisco Charura, who is from the Graduate Institute.
Given the rapid pace of technological change and the evolving nature of artificial intelligence models, how can the United Nations effectively change and adapt its mechanisms and frameworks to ensure that it addresses emerging human rights challenges in the digital age?
It's a very important issue, and really we have to react very, very quickly, because the science, technology develops very, very, very quickly. 2 years ago, nobody spoke about artificial intelligence. Now everybody speaks about artificial intelligence. And I think United Nations really reacted rather quick this time. Here in the library, we welcomed some time ago advisory board created by Secretary General on artificial intelligence. There are discussions on artificial intelligence in Human Rights Council, in other UN bodies. It's very, very important to look forward, to understand that artificial intelligence can bring immense benefits for the humanity. But of course, if it's not controlled, if it's not developed in a managed way, it can create lots of consequences. And it can create lots of negative consequences for human rights. How to protect our own rights, how to be aware that the future will be beneficial for all and will not create new global challenges, that's the question for us today.
Great. Our next question is from Lena Fox, who is from Sciences Po. Lena, what would you ask the Director General?
Yeah, how can freedom of expression, in every sense of the right, be protected in the age of our digital ecosystem, which is rapidly evolving in the context of AI?
It's another very important question, because on the one hand, we have to protect freedom of speech, freedom of expression. On the other hand, we have to fight with fake news, we have to fight with hate speech, and it's a very important work. Again, I think the role of the civil society should be very, very important here, and the role of the young people, because young people, you are mostly living in digital. You are expressing yourself in digital form. You are using social media, and we all have to respect certain rules. There are rules when we speak, when we express ourselves in traditional media, when we know about the rules and legislation. We have to apply the same approach in digital, because now there is no frontier between digital and physical world. But at the same time, I really would like to draw attention to the fact that freedom of expression is not equal to hate speech. And that's something which is very, very serious. We saw over decades how hate speech started, and that it led to discrimination, when it led to genocide and many other human tragedies. And we have to be aware of this. And it's another very important dimension for artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is not separate from our societies. Artificial intelligence is learning from us, from our heritage. And unfortunately, artificial intelligence is not intelligent enough to take only positive things. artificial intelligence is based on all our history of development. It's based on our stereotypes of the 20th century or even 19th century. And there is a risk that artificial intelligence might develop and become, well, I would say, more prejudiced, more discriminative than we are the humans of the 21st century. And that's a challenge. And that's a challenge for science and technology, how to avoid artificial intelligence developing step by step like humanity, but to build artificial intelligence based on the values, on the perceptions, on the principles of human being in the 21st century.
Thank you. Our next question is from Cristina Gonzalez Camarena from the Graduate Institute.
How can the youth help the UN?
Well, youth is already helping the United Nations. As I mentioned, for example, the climate struggle, the climate action, the climate crisis is really something which is very important example of the work young activists with the United Nations. We had young activists in the Tribune of the United Nations speaking about the climate crisis. So young people are always more revolutionary, more energetic, and you have a fresh eye. Quite often there is a crisis, there is a problem, and we older people, we know that this scenario is not working because we tried it 10 years ago. This solution is not working. We tried it 15 years ago. And that limits our ambitions. You young people, you don't have these limitations. Quite often you can offer something not from the box. You can really offer something revolutionary in the good sense of this word. So I really think that young people can help to transform the United Nations into modern multilateral system, which is fit for 21st century and which will be able to find solutions for the global challenges. And exactly young people, young movement should be part of integrated discussion whenever we are looking for the solutions.
Thank you, Director General. And our final question is from Abla Zidani, who is from the University of Geneva.
And how can the UN help the youth?
Well, we're responsible for the future generations. Youth, you have now, the biggest generation in history. And the numbers of young people all around the world are growing. So first and foremost, we in the United Nations, the member states of the United Nations, have to protect your future. And that means we have to save the planet. We have to save the planet from global catastrophes, be it artificial catastrophes or natural catastrophes. We have to protect our climate and to keep our development sustainable, so there will be enough resources for the future generations. We have to give young people education and the freedom of choice. Whenever they are born, every young person in the world have to have a right to education, to medical protection, to grow up and do something very positive with her or his life. So that's our responsibility of all the generations. But at the same time, we have to involve you in the decision-making process. Because, as I said, you can have better solutions quite often than those who are more professional, and that means have more stereotypes. That's why Secretary General has created a position of Assistant Secretary General for Youth. He recently visited Geneva, and we had a very good discussion about the future projects. I told him about the projects which we have in Geneva and of which we are very, very proud. For example, Graduate Studies Program or Young Activist Summit, when we invite every year 6 young activists from all around the world. They speak about the projects, they receive support for their project, but what's more important, they're inspiring millions of people, because all these events are now online, and we have 800 people in the room and many millions online. And really, we are helping these young people to inspire other young people, to show that there are no barriers, there are no limits. If you have an idea, if you have a vision, you will always find a solution. So I think it's beneficial. It's not about helping the young people or young people helping the United Nations. It's more about the partnership and working together, and it's maybe one of the best examples of exactly inclusive multilateralism.
Thank you so much, Director General, for being here today on the Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace.
Thank you.